Since the dawn of the 21st century, scientific discovery has rushed forward at lightning speed. Genetics, physics, computerized technology, robotics, virtual reality. Join Derek and Sharon Gilbert as they uncover the truths behind this ultimate scientific deception. Welcome to SciFriday.
Protecting architecture through engineering. That is... Welcome to SciFriday. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert, and welcome to our family room once again. We are, you know what? We've just got some excellent guests lately.
Yeah, it's really amazing how the Lord has opened doors for us to come to know and become friends with experts in biblical archaeology, which is just an astonishing field, but also epigraphers, Bible scholars, people can actually read ancient Sumerian and Akkadian. So, this is
They
really...
actually talk to us and go on camera with us. It's really, I believe it's a blessing because it is not us.
No,
it truly is not.
That is a fact. We are blessed to be able to share our excitement with use of the scientific method to explore this amazing creation that God has placed us into. He created humanity to take dominion over this wonderful world. We've done a pretty poor job of it so far, but a day is coming where he's going to restore the original factory settings and give us all jobs in the new heaven and the new earth, which is really, we hope to be in the archives.
Amen. Back in the back where
the nerd
nobody
squad,
ever sees us.
Right.
Yeah. No, that would be excellent. I would love that job. We really are. We are blessed to get to do what we do. So we've talked to a lot of people lately, and we've got another one today.
Yes. There's been another exciting inscription found. We talked previously about the lead curse tablet. Dr. Scott Stripling, who was also recently on the program talking about the location of the tabernacle and the location of the temple on the Temple Mount.
And we just saw him. By the time you're seeing this, it will be the past for us. We're recording this on July 23rd, so it's actually future. But we're going to see him at the Archaeology Conference.
Right. International Symposium on Archaeology in the Bible from Trinity Southwest and Veritas International Universities. They're the guys behind the dig at Tal El Hammam. If you haven't seen the interviews with Dr. Philip Sylvia a few weeks back, the director of scientific analysis at that dig site, you really need to go back and watch those interviews because it is absolutely stunning what they've discovered at this site within eyesight of Jericho, within eyesight of Mount Nebo.
I know. I wish we could go to Jericho, but it's technically forbidden.
Yeah, it's behind one of those signs that says, don't go in here. You might get shot.
A big red sign.
Yeah, big red sign, do not enter. But the Jordan side, they are very much open to Western tourists. That site is not a tourist site. It is on private property. But when we're there next March, and we'll tell you about our Israel tour later in the program, they will be over there digging. So while we're at the Archaeology Conference, we might have made arrangements to make a side trip over there. We'll let you know if that pans out.
All the more reason to sign up to go with us.
Yeah, absolutely. But another inscription, and we'll talk about this after the break. Dr. Doug Petrovich returns to discuss this inscription found dated to about 1300 BC, translated by Professor Gershon Galil, who was connected to the translation of the lead curse tablet from Mount Ebal at Joshua's altar.
Another place you get to visit when you go with us to Israel.
Yes, and Dr. Galil has translated this inscription. It was found about 10 years ago, but nobody could really make heads or tails of it. He identifies it now. He's quoted in the articles that have been published in the newspapers. We've not yet seen his academic paper. It's not yet published, but the secular press is reporting it as proto-Canaanite. Doug respectfully disagrees and says, no, this is more evidence of an early Hebraic script.
And this is Doug's expertise.
Yes. Doug is the author of the books, The World's Oldest Alphabet and Origins of the Hebrews, and so he explains why he identifies this as Hebrew rather than Canaanite. There's a key bit of evidence in there that we'll talk about after the program. There's a longer interview on my podcast, A View from the Bunker, that will be available by the time you watch this.
Go to gilberthouse.org.
Right.
Everything we do is right there.
Yep. And so if you find the interview with Doug, which is 15 minutes here, interesting, we got to talk for 45 minutes in that program. But there's a key clue which I thought is, that's brilliant. That cinches it for me. So, but you found an interesting article here,
that has nothing at all to do with it, Petrovich.
But Turkey, or Anatolia in the ancient world, Asia Minor in the New Testament period, was a place with a lot of biblical history.
Well, you and I wanted to visit Turkey this October, and so we're going to go in October of 2023 because we're a little concerned about some of the politics there. I won't get into everything going on right now, but if you just keep an eye on what's going on in Turkey, you will, I think you'll agree that there may be something. In fact, by the time this airs, it could be that the events that are currently lining up will ignite. Let's just put it that way. Turkey is really trying to promote itself as a tourist destination, particularly for Christians who love to go to the sites of the Bible, the New Testament sites, the churches of the book of Revelation. They are restoring and improving many of the sites so that they're more visitable and safer. There's a place called the Basilica Cistern. Basilica means a big law court or a meeting place. It's a Roman idea. We use it now as churches.
Right.
But basilica just means this really long space with a lot of room for people to come in and gather.
And it's connected to the Greek word basileus, which means king.
Yes.
So it's a royal space.
Yes, basilisk.
Yes.
A type of serpent.
Yeah.
So Basilica Cistern was created underneath this basilica, and the basilica was in the Byzantine Empire. So when Rome fell, Byzantium took over as the new Rome, and it was Greco-Roman instead of just purely Roman.
Right.
Constantine established it in Constantinople. Go figure. This was dug out to provide water for the entire city. Since then, it's been rediscovered because it is not just a hole in the ground. It's this magnificent underground cavern, the size of a cathedral.
Yeah, it's 140 meters long. That's about 300, that'd be almost 500 feet.
Yes.
500 feet long, 70 meters wide. That's about 240 feet wide.
With an entire forest of carved fluted pillars that are 30 feet high. They have beautiful carved capitals at the top, and some of them rest upon the bases of the head of Medusa.
Yeah.
So when we go to Turkey next year, we're going to try to get the tour company to include this because you can now go through on foot. Previously, you had to go through in a boat.
Oh, okay.
Not only can you walk through now, you can go to the little cafe.
Well,
there's a cafe inside.
You got to love the cafe.
I know. So this is a
336 columns in here. I mean,
yes.
You can see from the pictures that this is just absolutely a gorgeous space. But again, this was originally intended to provide water for the city because it was a fortified city.
Which is why there used to be water in it.
Right. The Emperor Justinian, who's the one who built the Hagia Sophia, which is nearby, built this. And it was an important thing because the city was besieged several times by the armies of Islam in the centuries that followed before it finally fell in 1452. Yeah, this would be a really fascinating spot to visit.
You and I on a future SciFriday, maybe even the next one we record, I would like to talk more about this cistern and about Constantinople at the time of Justinian because he was emperor when the 536 AD event occurred. That was this huge either comet that fell and kicked up such a dust cloud that it lasted for a year to two, some say 3 years, or it was a massive chain of volcanoes that spewed all of this dust into the air. But for at least a year, some say as many as 3 years, there was hardly any sun and the moon did not give her light.
Yeah. Lots of interesting things happened then. So yeah, that's a good idea. We'll talk about that in an upcoming episode.
Very much so.
But straight ahead, we talk with Dr. Doug Petrovich about the curse inscription from Jerusalem and why it is Proto-Hebrew and not Proto-Canaanite. That's next on SciFriday. Who would have thought just a few years ago we'd find ourselves in a world where refusing an experimental medicine could keep you from traveling, going to the store, or even cost you your job? Actually, we did. My novel, The God Conspiracy, was published last year when it suddenly became much more relevant than it had been when I started writing it more than 15 years ago. And I drew on characters and ideas developed by Sharon a few years earlier for her novel, The Armageddon Strain. We'd like to make The God Conspiracy available to you as part of our special offer during the month of August. It's a fast-moving story of people, ordinary people, who find themselves in circumstances beyond their control, and the only ones who really understand what's going on are those who see that we wrestle not against flesh and blood. During the month of August, we'll send you The God Conspiracy and 12 hours of video teachings. Our 2 DVD sets, Unmasking the Ancient Gods and This Is War. 4 discs in all, 12 hours of video teachings. A retail value altogether of $120 for just $35 plus shipping and handling. This offer is only available during the month of August and only at our store. Available online at gilberthouse.org. Welcome back to SciFriday. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and if you are a young person watching this show, I will say again, if you're trying to figure out what you want to do when you grow up, even if you're 80 years old and you want to figure out what you want to do when you grow up, archaeology. Yeah. Archaeology. I very nearly became an archaeologist.
Oh, wow.
I took some courses at University of Lincoln.
Yeah, if life had gone differently, that would have been a fascinating career to pursue. But we are blessed now at our age especially to just read their papers and report them to you. And we've gotten to know some and become friends with some, like Dr. Doug Petrovich, author of The World's Oldest Alphabet, Origins of the Hebrews, 2 books we highly recommend, and his take on the inscription at Jerusalem. Doug, it's good to see you again, and thank you for joining us on the program. This is pretty exciting that we got more stuff that's right in your wheelhouse to share here on SciFriday.
It is, Derek. These last several years have just been a boon with all the inscriptions and other important artifacts that have been found by archaeology.
What's really, this is almost comical. I guess it wouldn't have been funny to the governor of Jerusalem at the time, but the translation prepared by Professor Gershon Galil is... it's like somebody really, really didn't like the governor of Jerusalem 3,300 years ago. Cursed, cursed, you will surely die. Cursed, cursed, you will surely die. Governor of the city, you will surely die. Cursed, you will surely die. Cursed, you will surely die. Cursed, you will surely die. What is this? Is there a particular format that the cursed tablet follows? This sounds familiar. It sounds similar to the cursed tablet found in Mount Ebal.
It is. It's very similar to the Ebal curse inscription, and it probably is, if not contemporary, then not too far off at all chronologically from the same time frame. And I think that same formula exists in both inscriptions, suggesting to us that there was a very common curse formula that could be drawn upon at any moment by any person desiring to bring about a curse. And it, as my Old Testament professor used to say, good things happen to those who are blessed, and bad things happen to those who are cursed. And yes, somebody wants something very bad to happen to the governor or ruler of Jerusalem.
So the language here, Professor Galil was quoted in the articles that have been published by it, and I'm reading, of course, the secular mainstream media rather than the academic press, but he's describing it as a proto-Canaanite. What is your view?
Yeah, and certainly I would say that's the common term that's used. In my 2016 book, I try to debunk that, and even in my new book, Origins of the Hebrews of 2021, I also try to push how we need to change our terminology. This suggests to us that the inscription is rooted in the Canaanites, but it's not. And it suggests to us that the place where the language comes from, the people speaking the language, where they come from, is Canaan, but it's not. This is the same script as he has communicated in his transcription. Those letters are exactly as we see them. Of course, with every writer has his own personal modifications in letters, but it's the same script that goes back not to Canaan, but to Egypt in the 12th dynasty and Sinai in the 18th dynasty. 12th dynasty is Joseph's era. That's the 1800s BC, middle of the 1800s and following. And then the 18th dynasty is the 15th century BC. And of course, the Exodus occurs in 1446 BC. So it's there where that script originates. So for us to be calling a script that's in Canaan a proto-Canaanite script, I think that is confusing the issue and giving credit where credit is not due.
The dating of this inscription, they placed this around, about 1300 BC? So this would be early in the time of the judges?
Yeah, they're not conclusive about it. It's the find wasn't in what's called a primary context. It's in a secondary context, which means it wasn't found in the original occupational phase or occupational level of the people living at the time when it was inscribed. It was found in kind of like the Pilate inscription, if you're familiar with the Pontius Pilate inscription that was found at Caesarea. That was in a secondary context. This was in a later wall that was built secondarily. So it's from an earlier time. He can't really be certain about the timing. So any dates you see are suggested rather than specific. But I think he's fairly correct when he says that it can be dated to the late Bronze Age too. And that's basically any time from 1400 BC to a little after 1200 BC. So anywhere in that range is possible. But, I have my own inclination, and that would be somewhere between 1400 and 1300. But maybe it's a little bit after 1300 also. So
this would not be very long after the conquest by Joshua and the Israelites, not all that long after the Lachish milk bowl Ostracan?
Exactly, Derek. And Jerusalem is one of those cities that the Israelites don't permanently conquer. It's temporarily conquered in Joshua's day. It's one of the cities that's listed among the cities that he has conquered, but it doesn't stay in their possession. Most of the cities they conquer, they're just left as ghost towns, and they end up being occupied, but not by Israelites, because from the early period of the crossing, into Canaan and soon after the conquest, the Israelites have this tendency to kind of stick to what they know. They've learned through 40 years of nomadic life in the desert that they're a little more effective if they're semi-nomadic, if they're living in tents and they're on the move and they're protecting themselves with their stealth and so forth. So they don't move into cities. And Jerusalem seems to be one that they don't move into. They don't move into it until David conquers it in roughly 1002 BC. Mm-hmm. So it really, according to biblical history, anytime after Joshua's day until 1002 BC, it's open game for when this kind of thing could be written to or of the ruler or governor of Jerusalem.
What do we know about the history of Jerusalem prior to David?
The history of Jerusalem goes back to it's somewhere around 1900 or the 1800s BC. In Egyptian execration texts that we have that mention Jerusalem, and of course it's written in hieroglyphic Egyptian, but it's the equivalent. It's phonetically as close as the Egyptians could get to pronouncing Jerusalem as a Canaanite would. And that's where our first attestation or witness of the Jerusalemites is found. And from that point forward, it's very hit or miss. We don't have a whole lot of information about the city. And of course, the city itself, the hard part is it was occupied so long and so thoroughly, and it was destroyed so thoroughly that finding remnants from the early periods is going to be a tall task. So we don't have a whole lot that we can go by. But we have the account of the king of Salem, Melchizedek, and then we have the execration texts and a couple other references. And we have the Amarna tablets as well, attesting to an occupation at Jerusalem. So it's probably that occupation, most likely a little bit after or a century at best, a century after the Amarna letters of the middle of the 14th century BC. And
the Amarna letters were during the reign of Akhenaten?
primarily during Akhenaten. There are several that date to his father's reign, Amenhotep III, but primarily Akhenaten. So we're talking 1360s or so, 1370s BC,
Okay.
Somewhere in that era.
So who is the likely author then of this curse found at Jerusalem?
Well, of course, if you're Gershon Galil, or at least the people who are quoted in the the Jerusalem Post? No, it's the Haaretz article. So that's an Israeli newspaper, and they have published an article. This predates Gershon Galil's official publication in a scholarly journal, so we haven't hit that point yet as I'm speaking. We don't know all of what he's purporting, but what's stated in the article is probably Gershon Galil's position, but if not, somebody else that she hasn't quoted by name, they would be implying that it wasn't Israelites, but it was some other Jebusites who, for some reason, had this thing against the ruler of Jerusalem, or the whole city of Jerusalem, and all of a sudden wished this curse upon them. But to be honest, that's very strange. I don't know why you would have people of the same blood, same nationality, who are cutthroat against each other, heaping curses on each other, especially when they're neighbors to begin with, if it is some other Jebusite people, because they would be in Canaan. So personally, I think it's an extremely low percentage chance that the authors of this are Jebusites, Canaanite, or Jebusites living in Canaan. But instead, just like with the Mount Ebal curse tablet that mentions the name of the covenant God of the Israelites that was revealed first to Moses, the burning bush, Exodus 3. It's these Israelites. They're the only ones who make sense to be issuing this kind of curse. The Mount Ebal tablet itself, it's a curse against the Canaanites. This is a curse against the Jebusites, and it is almost certainly issued by the Israelites who are occupying the land and moving around as semi-nomads and wanting to see Jerusalem fall again, just like it did in the days of Joshua. This is probably the desire for a second fall, just like with Chatzor, which we've talked about before. It was destroyed under Joshua by the Israelites.
Right.
And then later in the 13th century BC, a time period that some people wrongly connect to the Exodus and the conquest, it doesn't connect to that. But Hatzor is very thoroughly destroyed, and that destruction is by the later Israelites, who are some generations after Joshua.
The destruction described, attributed to Deborah and Barak.
Exactly, that's the one.
Okay. So these Israelites then, in the 14th century BC most likely, would be a generation or two after Joshua and his defeat of the Amorite coalition, which included the king of Jerusalem, at the Valley of Ajalon. So that same military operation that led to the Ostracon being dropped at Lachish, within a generation or two, somebody reoccupied Jerusalem. It's a strategic location, obviously, and perhaps religious significance attached to it. And then some Hebrew left this curse in a temple on the wall of Jerusalem, apparently, or the wall below the city, if I understand the location of this temple correctly.
Yeah, and again, because the inscription was found in a secondary context, we're left to speculate.
Okay.
Right? My speculation would be probably this was a message delivered either by a Hebrew or certainly inscribed by a Hebrew, but somebody delivers it to the king or petty king or governor of the city of Jerusalem at the time, which again, Jerusalem is not a massive major player on the chessboard at the time of the 14th century BC and the 13th century BC. It's not that big of a city, but it has its own ruler, and from the Amarna letters, we know he's in correspondence with the king of Egypt, with Pharaoh. So somebody delivers it. It's almost certainly written by a Hebrew, and the goal was to intimidate the Jerusalemite people and the ruler. to let them know that bad things are going to happen to them because bad things have happened to, from Joshua's day until then, to many other Canaanite and Jebusite and Amorite people all around, right? So seeing all that, the anticipation was something else bad is about to happen. And Jerusalem, you are next on the list. Now, we don't know, Derek, if this ever came to fruition, if something bad did, in fact, happen to this ruler of Jerusalem. Maybe it did. We just don't know. But again, even if it did, it wasn't so significant that the Israelites were able to attack the city, conquer it again, overtake it, and occupy it.
Dr. Doug Petrovich, the author of two books that we highly recommend, The World's Oldest Alphabet and Origins of the Hebrews. Doug, where do people find copies of your books?
Well, they can find them on Amazon. That's the easy way to do it. They can find them with my publishers. The World's Oldest Alphabet can be bought from Carta in Jerusalem, or Origins of the Hebrews can be bought from my publisher in Nashville, Tennessee, which is New Creation, or they can buy them directly from me. And of course, that will help me the most. It gives me the best royalties because Amazon, the cash cow, takes a lot.
Yes.
And there's, as you know, as an author, there's very little left over for us after Amazon
That's right.
its claws into it all. So you can always buy it from me. I'll be glad to inscribe those, to sign those for you and send them off. So check my Twitter page if you're interested in that, or look me up on academia.edu.
All right. Dr. Doug Petrovich, thanks very much for your time and for your work. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure, sir.
The bit of evidence I found most compelling, the definite article, the.
Yes.
It didn't exist in the Canaanite language at that time. That was about the same period. The Ugaritic texts that have been found, the Akkadian texts that were found before this inscription is dated to about 1300 BC, didn't exist. And yet it's in the curse tablet, governor of the city.
Yes.
Ha'ir.
Yes, yes.
It didn't exist in Akkadian or Ugaritic, so this could not have been from either of those languages. But it did exist and does to this day in Hebrew.
Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah. So the question is, why is the scholarly consensus still denying the existence of Hebrew prior to about the 9th century BC?
Well, we could get into that, but that would take a long time. Let's just say they don't want to.
They don't want to. So more evidence as the stones continue to cry out about the biblical history of the Bible. Yes, there were Hebrews in the land by the time of, say, Akhenaten in the 14th century BC, and they really didn't like his governor, or this might have been one of the Jebusites, who David later, 300 years later, had to move out in order to set up his capital. Fascinating stuff, and this is why we love science, and we thank you for watching. This is SciFriday.
SciFriday is a viewer-supported outreach of Gilbert House Ministries. Follow us online at scifriday.tv and gilberthouse.org. That's where you'll find our weekly Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship. Join us each week as we go through the Bible verse by verse in chronological order. We'd love to hear from you. Contact us through our websites or drop us a line at P.O. Box 78, Crane, Missouri 65633.